Welcome to Milking the Franchise, the Cash Cow Chronicles, where me and Chris watch movies. Sorry, I left you hanging there.
No,
Or do you want to? We rewatch movies.
Movies. And this is, we're back in Spooky Town, so I feel like we need to start doing the ghost voice again on the movie.
You're right. Yeah, it's not Halloween, but it is spooky.
It's a spooky season of a different variety.
It's the milk season, baby. We got more sequels coming out.
That's right.
That's right. We're watching Ghostbusters today. Starting the 5-movie arc on that, leading up to the new release next month. Can't wait.
That's right. Yeah.
On this show, Chris, what are we doing here?
Man, Tanner, shooting the shit mostly, but also
yes.
While we're doing that, we basically pick a movie franchise. We watch each one of the movies from that franchise in order, and while we're doing that, we like to read whatever books or graphic novels. We play video games, board games, whatever we can get our grubby
watching
little paws
spin-off
on.
TV shows.
Oh, we love some good spin-off TV shows. So we just wrapped up our kind of little, our little run of Riddick films, which I think we're going to talk about here in a minute. And then we watched the first of our new series, which, like you mentioned, is the Busters of Ghosts.
The Busters. The bustin makes us both feel really good.
It feels so good. Yeah.
Chris,
but before we get into that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so good. Dude. I'm so good. I'm very pumped for this. I was kind of like, I got to watch Ghostbusters again. I've seen it many times. But the more I got into how much there is around this movie, games, and all the stuff surrounding it, it got me really excited. So I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Big news. Biggest news. One of my coworkers came back from the United States. So I am now the proud owner of a box of Girl Scout cookies. The what are they called now?
Ooh.
Caramel Delights. They're not Samoas anymore. Caramel Delights.
They're not Samoas anymore?
No, they changed the name.
I literally just ordered some last night from my niece, and they were called Samoas. On the website, at least.
Is your niece Samoan?
Yes, that's
she plays offensive line at University of Oregon. Yeah.
Well, I just like to say that I can't just have one box. I always want Samoa,
Jesus. There it is. Starting this thing off right.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't hear that they changed the name, but those are my favorite ones.
They're the best ones by far. Yeah. So anyway, there's some things that I can't get living where I'm living, and it's a nice little taste of home. I have, I think, 2 cookies of the whole box left at this point.
Yes. Wait, how did you get it? Do you have a niece?
No, one of my coworkers, her husband goes back to the United States a lot, and so she just asked me if I wanted any Girl Scout cookies, to which I said hell yes. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever actually bought them. I like them, but this year I ended up buying them from 2 different kids. One of them was my coworker's niece, and then my own niece who I didn't know was doing it. I would have saved it for that, but
you're keeping these kids afloat, Tanner.
I bought four boxes, or 2 for myself, and then 4 that I just donated. That was an option to just donate them to someone else because I don't want 8 boxes of cookies.
Oh no, yeah.
In my life,
one of my friends was like, "Why didn't you order more than 1 box?" And my answer to that was, "I'm gonna eat all of the Girl Scout cookies by the end of tonight, so
you're like, it's
just a matter of how many boxes that is. That's the only.
That's
question.
Exactly it. Yeah, I have to keep snacks out of my house just because they'll just be gone. I can't ration them. No, that's not going to happen.
What, do I have self-control? Get out of here.
It's a drug. If I had drugs, I'm going to do them. Yeah, so let's see. My week, I saw Madam Web. That was my big
That's right.
accomplishment. I wish you were there, Chris.
I wish I could have been there.
It
Do you
was
want to give the
very
people
fun.
any context for Madam Web, or just leave it
It's
there?
everyone knows about Madam Web. Everyone knows about it.
It's
It's the world's biggest movie. Um, no,
something
it's
like that.
we do a bad movie Monday thing. We've been doing it for years, and we did it
That's
in
right.
person. Usually we stream it online, but we did it in person and got together and saw a really bad movie, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
was worried that we were going to be too like distracting with the other people in the theater.
Like we were at
Um,
Fast and the Furious when we went to that last summer.
yes, that was
Yeah.
a little way more rambunctious than this one, but we were also laughing throughout the movie, and people were behind us were also catching on that we were making fun of it. So
Gotcha. So they got
I
in on the joke with you.
feel like they joined in. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think there was any diehard Madam Web fans in the audience. That I didn't see anyone in costume.
I think
So
they call themselves webheads.
I mean, if you're a webhead and you're going to go see it 10 days after release, you're not a webhead. Sorry.
It's very true. Very true.
Um,
Madam.
sir. Um, all right. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about Ghostbusters today, the first of it, and then we have a lot of milk to get into, which is the IP and spin-offs and video games afterwards. But first, if you're new to the show, we release surveys for every movie, kind of get you joking and talking about it and interacting. And this is something we actually started with the bad movie side for me as a means to get people talking and joking about the movie afterwards.
Yeah.
And I realized when we saw it live today, or not today, but the other day, we went out for a beer afterwards, and that was a great time. We got to actually talk about the movie. So many of these we've watched 150 of these bad movies, and most of the time we don't get time to like reminisce on it and like discuss anything because it's like late and people gotta go to bed. But it's fun talking about it. So let's do that for last week's movie, Riddick. So yeah, we're gonna read the previous episode survey at the beginning of each show, kind of lead you in. And we're going to wrap Riddick up real quick before we get bustin'.
Richard B. Ready.
I am Riddick. I'm ridiculous.
Yeah. These aren't good
All right.
jokes, but we're saying them anyway. Continue.
They're just, we're just free flowing right now.
We're flowing. We're vibing. Yeah.
All right. So we watched Riddick, the final, just called Riddick, final movie in the trilogy so far from 2013. The favorite line of the movie was a four-way tie. I'll read you a few of them. You're jinxing our janks, man. You need to unjinxulate our fucking janks. That had to be yours, right? I know you love that line.
I love that line. That was my vote. Yes. It doesn't make any sense, and the guy delivers it with so much confidence. It's chef's kiss, baby, chef's kiss.
Also, shout out to the Reddit users who took this survey. It got less and less each week, but that's okay.
Thank you. Still, though, it's like really fun for
us
to see a couple people, even like one or two people. It makes a big difference than just Tanner and I reading our jokes to one another. So thank you.
I mean, I'll do that all day if you
want.
Oh
yeah. Mm-hmm. We have a sister podcast where that's all we do.
The Joke Boys. So the other line that I liked was I committed the worst crime of all. I got civilized. So good. The worst part of Riddick's legendary bad day was the scorpion creature. That's the big winner.
All right.
I thought stinky water was pretty bad, but I guess not as bad as the other stuff. Best way to find your animal side. The winner is cut open a scorpion by sliding underneath its belly.
Meow. I'm feeling my animal side just listening to that. Rower.
We gotta get out of our animal side today and get into our ghost busting side.
Ooh, our extra paranormal.
Yeah. So that's the winner there. Best kill of the movie was by a landslide. The sword juggling kick, chopping the guy's head in half.
The only answer to that question, I think. That was such an epic kill. Yeah.
It was great. And then we got some prompts here. So besides Jack, what should Riddick name his jackal pet? We got Jakey and Mr. Num Nums. Richard B. Jackal. Nice. Animal Side. And
ooh, I like that.
Little Richard. Little Richard B.
Little Richard B. Yeah. Little Richard B. Good. Yeah.
And then how do you find your animal side again, Chris? The answers we got by watching Pitch Black, going to a furry convention.
Ooh, yes.
That's a good one. Horse tranquilizers. Throwing knives in my wall.
Okay.
And that's just a badass thing that you do to.
It is pretty badass. I haven't tried it. Maybe that's
something like
I'm not as animal sided as some of those other schmoes out there.
Something a Merc would do for sure.
Oh yeah.
And then shaving my balls with a knife and motor oil. Dead silence.
Great question. All four of those made me laugh.
All I heard was dead silence, but I'm assuming you were laughing too hard and the microphone cut it out.
That's what it is. It overpowered my microphone.
And then we asked you to rate Riddick. Got about a 4 out of 5 on average. Pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
Ooh, we are split here. Everyone is split. So we asked the favorite movie. The winner was Pitch Black, but some people like Chronicles of Riddick more. Some people like Riddick more. Kind of shocked.
I think you and I had different favorite movies from this franchise, right?
I guess that's true.
You said Riddick and I said Pitch Black. I am a little surprised that someone picked Chronicles of Riddick because I think we both agreed that was the third of the three for us. But that's cool. That's cool that somebody out there was into that one too.
Yeah, I mean they're all about the space opera.
Mm-hmm.
Least favorite movie, we got a split right down the middle between the Chronicles of Riddick and Riddick.
Okay.
So, I think it's just us that didn't like Chronicles of Riddick.
Maybe that's it. Maybe we
or at least thought it was the worst of the three.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite planet this is just overall Riddick questions. Favorite planet in the whole franchise, Crematoria is the winner. Best Johns, we got a tie between Johns and Johns. That was
what a stupid question. I love that
one. Favorite milk, 100% was the Butcher Bay video game. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Those motion comics were bad. The short film was pretty good, but that game was great. And then what do you want to see from the Riddick franchise next? We got Riddick Furia, the announced sequel that was announced like 10 years ago. So hopefully we see it one day.
Mm-hmm.
Someone wrote in a necromonger religious propaganda version of VeggieTales. That's great.
That's fantastic.
Whoever you are writing these, would you please just keep writing in answers for us for every movie? You don't have to listen. Just keep giving us these jokes because you're writing some good stuff here.
They're gold, man. And honestly, in the age of AI, you could probably make that necromonger VeggieTales. Like we could make that happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How do you do that? You put in the file for the VeggieTales and the file for Chronicles of Riddick, and then it just craps out a movie for it?
Well, you put in the VHS for VeggieTales, and then
AI works.
And then you yell lines from the Riddick franchise at the VCR while it's happening, and then AI turns that into a new thing.
Chris, name one line from Chronicles. Say one line from Chronicles of Riddick. Go. I can't think of any either.
That's one line from.
No, it was just. That's all right. It doesn't matter. That was the point. Anyways, so that was good stuff. Thank you for taking the survey, guys. And there will be another one for Ghostbusters and every Ghostbusters movie ever made.
Oh,
and I can say that. So let's do that. Let's get talking about ghosts.
Yeah. Goodbye to Riddick. That was a fun little space detour for the last month. But yeah, it's bustin' time, baby.
Oh, it's bustin' time.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters. The original Ghostbusters. I'm sure
Bustin'
everyone's
makes
seen
me
it.
feel good.
Bustin'.
Mhm.
Came out in 1984, directed by Ivan Reitman.
Yep.
Classic comedy director, Meatballs, Stripes, of course, Kindergarten Cop. Who could forget?
Oh,
Um,
classic.
yeah. How are we going to do this breakdown, Chris? Everyone's already seen this.
Yeah, we had the same problem with like the Indiana Jones movies, where it's like,
Yeah.
who really needs a recap of a movie that everyone's seen 15 times? But I think we kind of go through our recap. We have some fun detours along the way, but we save a big chunk of the show today for the TV
stuff.
shows, the milk, the extra stuff. Does that sound all right to you?
Sounds good.
Cool.
Let me have it. Where do we begin here?
Well, man, we begin in a library. One of the readingest.
One of the most exciting places to start your movie.
Without a doubt. Who knows? Maybe they're in fiction. Maybe they're in nonfiction. Maybe they're in atlases. It doesn't really specify at the start of this movie.
Wait, I just had an idea of like a Westworld style thing, but it's in a library, and anytime you enter that genre, there's like that world is in that genre. Does that make sense?
That sounds a lot like the TV show Wishbone from when we were kids on PBS.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
It's a little dog who goes on
Wishbone makes me feel good.
There it is. Oh, listeners, I'm sorry in advance. We're gonna make that same dumb joke from the Ray Parker Jr. song 100 times today. So
start your counters, the busting counter.
Yep. If we say it 100 times, everyone gets free Taco Bell. So if we get 100, yeah.
For all of our listeners, I can afford that.
Yeah.
Just tell me about Wishbone real quick while we're on there.
Oh, it was a show on PBS with a little dog, and the little dog would have they would reenact famous books. So like they would use Scarlet Letter and Tom Sawyer and like those, but instead of the main character was a little dog.
Great. I love it.
Yeah.
We'll do Wishbone after Ghostbusters.
Perfect. Yeah.
Anyway, so we start in a library. We can't even get out of the damn library.
Dude, our tangent game is strong today, Tanner.
Oh, let's do it.
Okay. So we're in the library. We're following around this librarian, and spooky things are afoot. It starts small with some books like moving shelves without anyone touching it, and eventually kind of escalates until this poor librarian is being like chased out of the library by flying books and all those little cards. What are those called? Little like sorting cards for books.
I have no idea.
Okay.
You mean like by letter or whatever, like alphabetized?
Do you know that scene I'm talking about at the beginning of this, where there's like rows and rows of little drawers with little filing cards in them? I don't understand how that system works because I think I'm too young.
It's called the Dewey Decimal System.
Tell me more. just figure it out, Chris.
Mr. Dewey came up with a system involving decimals to categorize books.
Now I understand. Thank you. So those things are going, and then it kind of shows this a flash of light on this woman's face, and she screams, and cue the intro music. The first of 3 times that they play the Ghostbusters theme song by Ray Parker Jr. Such a classic.
Another movie just driven by its theme song. I mean, the movie's great on its own, but much like a Shaft or something like that, that song really had its own life.
Yes, and I think made it into the cultural moment in a lot of ways that this movie became. I think that song was a huge part of that. Yeah.
I saw just that they estimate, I don't know how they estimated this, that the song brought this movie an extra $20 million at the box office. I don't know how you get that estimation, but that's what I read.
Well, here's how you do it. You put the VHS tape for Ghostbusters in the VCR, and you yell lines from Chronicles of Riddick at the VCR. I bet it prints that out for you.
It sounds right to me.
Okay, yeah. Don't check my math. So we get our intro music, and then we cut to, I think they're in New York, right? but a
Yeah,
university in New York City. And what's going on at the university, Tanner?
A lot of pseudoscience crap.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, they somehow work at this university, although it's not going to be for long. But it starts off with Bill Murray testing. Bill Murray's kind of a creep in this movie.
Like a charming creep. But
he's super funny and charming, but like, he's definitely like, he's testing a guy and a girl, a cute girl, and they're trying to guess what card is on the other side of the card, and he's shocking it every time they get wrong. So the guy's sometimes getting him right, and he shocks him anyway. The girl is getting him all wrong, but he's telling her how special she is and how she's getting him all right. So he's basically using this as a way to hit on this chick.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're no fluke, Jessica." Like his whole thing is like telling all these girls that he believes them, that they're like seeing ghosts or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's how it starts.
Yeah.
So that's all I got. Yeah.
A student of his, as you mentioned, creepy. But his coworker Dan Aykroyd busts in, and they've got a hot lead at the library downtown, and it's time to go do some paranormal research, because that's kind of what Dan Aykroyd's character is into.
Yeah, and they kind of work in the same department, I'm assuming, but they hadn't really been on a ghost hunt or seen anything ever before, because it starts off Venkman's like a big cynic, and like he doesn't believe any of this stuff, and he's like, "Oh, sure," but he's in the department too. But I think he seems like more of a grifter almost than a believer.
With that shocking experiment he was doing to those two kids, it really doesn't seem like he's a great scientist at the beginning of this movie. He's no Oppenheimer.
He's no Oppenheimer. What a great man. Yeah. But they go to the library and they find some ectoplasmic residue.
We also meet the third main character at the library, Egon. Continue.
Yes, Harold Ramis himself. Mm-hmm. So we got Dan Aykroyd is the first one there. I think you mentioned that. Bill Murray and Harold Ramis. And they go to the library and they don't have any plan for what to do when they find the first apparition. A full torsoed apparition.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny. That they really didn't have any plan. This movie just like kills with all the deadpan jokes. Like the lines are so good all throughout this movie.
Yeah.
So they send Peter out there to talk to it, Venkman. And he says hello.
That's Bill Murray's character. If you have not actually seen the movie, Venkman is Bill Murray. Go ahead.
Yeah. He says, "Hello, I'm Peter. Where are you from originally?" And then he like, she doesn't do anything. And he says, "The usual stuff isn't working." Just more of his like, this is him. He's like almost hitting on the ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happens? They don't catch the ghost, do they? They end up just she kind of like spooks them and they run out screaming.
Well, they run at her first. That's Dan Aykroyd's plan, is to like run at her and grab her. Yeah. She turns into, she like anamorphs into a way scarier ghost, and then they run away.
They run away screaming. They don't catch it, and they immediately go back to their workplace and are fired from the university, and they take away all their funding.
Yep.
For being bad at their jobs. This kind of happens really fast. They kind of call them basically grifters, or kind of just like taking advantage. And there's nothing happening here. But luckily for them, Dan Aykroyd had inherited a house, so Venkman convinces him to put an extra mortgage on his house and get a bunch of money, so they can start their own business. And they get right into it, Chris.
That's right. It's similar to how you took out a mortgage on the apartment that you rent so we could start this podcast.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's a real fixer-upper of a podcast.
A starter home podcast.
I'm about to flip this podcast.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Podcast flippers. HGTV.
Yep. So they've got this idea. They've got some money, and they go about building out this ghost hunting business, this ghost busting business, excuse me. They rent out a dumpy old firehouse because Ray is all about it and it's his money. They also buy a hearse as their kind of like Ghostbusters car, which we will see throughout, I think, all of the IP for these movies.
Oh yeah, iconic.
Iconic, super iconic.
Not used enough in this movie.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And let's see, they hire Janine as their, like, I don't know, receptionist. Thank you. Yeah.
And they make a commercial. We don't see this, but then it's focused on the main girl of this movie. Sigourney Weaver shows up.
That's right.
She just walks into her apartment, basically, and sees the Ghostbusters commercial. Very timely for what's about to happen. And she bumps into Rick Moranis in the hallway, who's kind of her nerdy neighbor who talks a lot. And
he's in peak Rick Moranis in this movie.
He's like in love with her, obviously, and she's ignoring him. So yeah, that's what happens there. I noticed he kind of like always in this movie, he opens the door right when she's like walking by. So it's like he's always waiting for her to appear. And then he ends up locking himself out every time as well.
Every time, which is a great gag. Yeah. I noticed, I appreciated watching this movie for the umpteenth time because I feel like I paid more attention to his lines and the stuff that he was doing a little more this go through.
I love Rick Moranis.
He's a funny character in this. Great actor too. Yeah.
So yeah, she sees the Ghostbusters commercial, and then soon after that, she goes into her kitchen and weird things happen.
That's right.
What?
The eggs start cooking themselves, I think.
Yeah, they start just hopping out of their carton and cooking and exploding right there on the counter.
Yep.
And then
also inside of her fridge is some sort of weird, like, apocalyptic, paranormal
realm.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And she hears the word Zool. So having just seen that commercial, she kind of goes to see the Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is going to be their first client. They're just kind of hanging out with the receptionist, and they've had zero business at all. And there's a funny line where she's like, "Do you have any hobbies?" to Harold Ramis, and he says, "I collect spores, molds, and fungus." And I think she's like trying to hit on him throughout this movie, and he just is not aware of it. She shows up.
You're talking about the receptionist, Janine, right?
Yes.
Also, at the beginning of that scene, he crawled out from under her desk.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't understand that, but do you
I think he was like trying to fix something down below. It was a strange moment. They didn't really acknowledge it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But so Sigourney Weaver shows up. Venkman pops out. He runs out and jumps over the thing to talk to her because it's a pretty lady, and it's a new client potentially. And he goes. She tells him what happens. They kind of like give her a test to see if she's lying, and they say she definitely believes what happened. So we'll go check it out. So Venkman goes to her apartment to check it out. And she says, "You're going to check the fridge." Tells him what happens in the fridge, and he says, "You generally don't see that kind of behavior on a major appliance," which that's a great line.
Great line. Yeah.
And throughout this time in the apartment, he's being kind of creepy again. He's just using it as an attempt to like try to hit on this chick. Because he doesn't really believe. Well, he saw a ghost. He should believe it by now.
Yeah. Well, and if he didn't believe it, you would think that would be like kind of a red flag.
Yeah.
Totally. This girl is like insane enough that she's seeing like apparitions and ghosts and shit. Maybe I should find a girlfriend who doesn't see those things.
He's doing lots of funny little things. Like he's playing taps the piano keys, and he's like, "They hate this. I like to torture them about the ghost." They don't know what they're doing. Basically, is what they're setting up. They're kind of just figuring it out. What else happens here, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of shoots his shot. He very directly asks her out, and ends up leaving her apartment, but basically is like, I'm going to fix this problem for you and prove that I'm like worth going out on a date with. And so he takes off. And what does happen after that?
There's another shot of Rick Moranis just opening the door. He sees Venkman, or Venkman leaves the apartment, and Rick Moranis pops out, assuming it's going to be Sigourney Weaver hopping out of there. And then he locks himself out again. Just setting up that he's always like waiting at the peephole for her. And then they got another call. So they get another real call. The receptionist is all excited.
And this one's kind of fun because like everything's up and running. So they like go down the fire poles and the Ecto one, their car is like ready to rock, and they've got their, I don't know, Ghostbusters packs, the proton packs, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did
you ever have a proton pack growing up, Chris?
I had. Tell me.
Oh, just we had like a little toy that was like a little backpack that had the little proton pack thing that you put in the middle of the room, and then you like step on a little button and it would like pop open.
Okay.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
It was, I mean, it was awesome when I was a kid, and not just cool. It was like fucking so cool.
Oh yeah, I bet. I mean, the design on all of the stuff in this movie is, I don't know, very impressive. What cool toys, you know? What kid wouldn't want to play with that stuff?
Yeah, this movie was born to succeed with all the merch.
With all the merch, for sure. Yeah.
So they go to like a busy hotel, a nice hotel, and they find another ghost. Who do we find here?
I mean, we got Slimer here, right?
Oh yeah, baby.
Yeah, so they get sent up to the 12th floor, and there's some mysterious goings on that happened on the 12th floor way back in the day. So they show up with their proton packs, ask the maid, and we meet Slimer for the first time.
Not called Slimer yet.
Yeah.
Slimer's actually not mentioned in this at all. The name Slimer. He's just this little green ghost, but he ends up showing up in everything after this, basically. But that name isn't made until that spin-off cartoon show, The Real Ghostbusters, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But he was. They
do say in this movie that he like slimes them.
Yeah.
So I think like the name makes a lot of sense, but you're
totally
right. They don't call him Slimer. He doesn't have a name in this thing.
They called him at the time the Onion Head Ghost or something like that, and I think they said the prop just smelled bad, I guess, and that was what originally it was referred to until the cartoon show. But yeah.
But basically, if you don't know Slimer, fat, green, kind of adorable, and loves to eat. That's just kind of the whole thing.
And at this time, he had not yet had his partnership with Fritos or whatever it is. Which
Cheetos.
One was it?
I think it was Cheetos. Yeah.
He hadn't started his agreement with Cheetos yet, so he was eating everything, just anything, not just Cheetos.
Yeah. Hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
What else he ate in this? But
just plates of food. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's like digging through the maid cart in this scene. So, so we're back in the hotel, and they find Slimer on the 12th floor. The Ghostbusters all have kind of terrible aim because they're just like figuring this stuff out, and they follow Slimer into this giant ballroom and just fuck the place up, like completely destroy this place. But at the end of the day, they do catch their ghost, and we also learn that. Go ahead.
Well, they've got this. Just to explain it, if you haven't seen it, like these packs on their back, they're like nuclear accelerators on their back, with little like gas hoses looking things that are their guns, and it shoots like these beams of light out, and that is supposed to like contain the ghost while they lower it into this little chamber that catches it. So this is kind of the general setup there, and this beam of energy is destroying everything in the hotel because they're missing, and they've never actually used these things before. That's. Thank
you for filling in those dots. Yeah.
Oh, they say don't cross the streams. That's a big thing in this. Chris, what were you going to say? They find out something.
That you aren't allowed to cross the streams. You just beat me to what I was going to say.
Nice. Okay.
One thing that kind of bugs me about this movie is they do a lot of like scientific hand waving, and they just use big words to make it sound like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things. Like, you aren't allowed to cross the streams because like the VHF co-contributors will deoxylate the bi-4 second, you know, it's like a lot of crap like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah. It's filled
that
with
comes
that.
back later, though. You're not allowed to cross streams, etc.
And that's a funny like P joke, right?
Mhm.
Urinating joke. Don't cross my stream.
That's right.
But yeah, they get $5,000 out of this. They tell the guy that's how much it's going to cost. It's going to be $5,000. And he says, "Well, I'm not going to pay that. I didn't know it was going to cost that much." And they're like, "Well, we'll just let the ghost back out." So,
which is that's a pretty good counter argument. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
And then we get the big montage of them fully becoming Ghostbusters. It's just like them, like, you know, getting famous, basically, like going and busting all sorts of ghosts throughout the city, and they're on talk shows, and Larry King's talking about them. I forgot how instantly they were like well known. For some reason, I thought like people didn't know about them really. But
yeah, we haven't even met the fourth Ghostbuster yet, and already they're like on the covers of newspapers and on TV and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so we get our big bustin' montage, and it ends with the biggest bust of all time, the ghost blowjob dream.
What is that? Yes.
Yeah, there's a part in it where he, Dan Aykroyd is like, I think it's a dream though, right? Because
I have no idea.
It shows them all sleeping in beds right next to each other, and then there's a shot of him like, and it's just the Ghostbusters song playing during all this, but it shows him like laying in bed, and a ghost comes and visits him, and he's like, she like unbuckles her belt and starts to take his pants off, and his eyes go cross-eyed.
He immediately goes, "Oh, face." Yeah. It's a really weird scene, and it's really weird that they didn't cut that out of the movie.
You know? I know it's funny. Like, I think it's a funny scene, but it's also like, I mean, it's PG rated, but at the time that was a different thing, as we discussed before. But it doesn't really need to be in there, especially since it's a dream. If they did a whole comedy scene with this in it, where it's like, this just happened and we got haunted by a ghost, and it's like a funny moment, but it's like such a quick little moment.
Yeah.
But I guess they thought it was funny enough.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of their money on figuring out how to unzip the pants without anyone touching it, so they had to use it.
Oh yeah, I mean, otherwise you're losing money, dude.
You're just losing money.
Yeah.
Anything else happened in that montage?
There was one Bill Murray line in there that I liked a lot, where he's on the news, he's being interviewed, and he goes, "No job is too big, no fee is too big." And I thought that was really funny.
Great.
But yeah, big montage scene, and we hear the Ray Parker song again. So I think we're at 2. We're counting 2
at least. Yeah.
So. And then after that scene, we finally hire the fourth Ghostbuster, Ernie Hudson, who doesn't really do very much in this movie. I'm not sure how much he has to do in the second one, but the team's all here now.
Yeah, he's kind of like, I look at it like he was just kind of, the Ghostbusters have gotten so big to the point where it's not just these idiots like doing this Ghostbusters thing, but it's like a full-fledged business, and they have to hire more people because they have been busting everywhere all over the city, and they can't keep up. So it's like, I think that was the main reason they needed another person to be like, hey, like, this is a business that's booming. We need more. We need more people.
It's hard work busting all over the city, and you need more dudes to keep up with all that busting, is what you're trying to say.
I mean, yeah.
I'm on board.
You need more dudes to bust, of course.
Busting makes me feel good. If we get to 100, you get free Taco Bell.
Well, that's why the female-led version didn't do as well, is because they don't bust as hard as guys.
Jesus, Tanner. I'm not touching that.
You're not touching my bust?
I'm not touching your bust. Yeah.
So he's hired. Then we get some backstory about Zool, right?
Yes.
Am I jumping ahead?
No, I think you're in the right spot. This is where Venkman goes to meet Dana at her orchestra job, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So she's like, you got any info on my case? Because it's like an open case situation, I guess.
Yep.
And they did some digging, some history stuff about some guy named Zool, who's a demigod from 6000 BC, and he's a minion of Gozer the Gozerian. And Chris, is any of this real historical like myth or anything? Do you know?
Oh,
Or did
I
they
don't know. I thought it
completely
was
make it up?
all. I thought it was all made up. Gozar the
Probably is.
Gozerian. Yeah, that seems like nonsense to me. But I did
Uh,
not. So maybe I'm wrong.
could be.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he's being flirty again with her, and it seems like she's into it now all of a sudden. But that's kind of all that happens here. They show a scene next of so they, if you're wondering what they do with all these ghosts that they've been busting, they have a giant machine where it's like a ghost storage machine. So they go in and take their small little capture device, put it in there, and it goes into this larger device, just housing like hundreds of ghosts potentially. And then you're introduced.
They keep saying that there's a laser grid in there, which doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever.
This is your science mumbo jumbo stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say it's a comedy. I feel like in comedy sci-fi, this stuff is more forgivable because it's just like it's more of a comedy than a sci-fi, or does that make sense?
Yes. No, they're not beholden to actually following science.
Yeah.
I think it bugged me more. Well, I'll talk about this later, but I watched a couple episodes of the REAL Ghostbusters, and they use that as such a crutch. Like there are extended scenes where they're just talking nonsense science, and it's just like, dude, this isn't even good TV. Like, but in this movie, I honestly think if I hadn't watched that right after, I would feel a little bit better about them saying things
you started to pick up on it.
Yeah. But even in this one, they say things like a fourfold cross rip and a PKE surge. Like that doesn't mean anything. Those are just nonsense things.
Well, we could. There's a survey question. Come up.
Okay. Come up with some sort of nonsense
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're introduced to Walter Peck after this, and he's kind of, what does he do?
He's the heartthrob of the movie.
I thought Slimer was the heartthrob.
Oh, he's my heartthrob. No, but Walter, what did you say? Walter Peck?
Yeah.
Pecker Walt. So Walter Peck works for the EPA, which is a hilarious branch of government to make the villain in your movie. And he's there because he's afraid that all these ghosts are causing an environmental impact. And it's his job to stand up to the Ghostbusters.
He doesn't even believe there are ghosts, but whatever they're doing, right? He's kind of just suspicious of like chemicals and things. I don't even know.
Well, it's the fourfold cross rips and the PKE surges. He doesn't understand them, Tanner.
Well, that's because he works for the EPA. He's not a scientist.
Yeah, he's not a buster.
He's just he's a buster for sure. So he there's a funny moment where he meets Bill Murray. He comes into Bill Murray. He's like, show me this ghost cage or whatever, ghost container. Or else I'm going to get a warrant and all this. And he said, well, you got to get a warrant. Come back. And they have a little fight. But Bill Murray, when he meets him, was like just covered in slime. When they've been super busy, I feel like Bill Murray's just always covered in slime, or all of them are. So he like shakes his hand and it's all slimy.
Ectoplasm, isn't that what they call it?
Yeah.
Great.
Ectoplasm.
I want to make sure I get my completely made up bullshit words right.
It's ghost jizz, if you layman's terms. No, but that's the bust. That's the bustin'.
It makes me feel good.
He like wipes it on this. He's just like a slow moment where he kind of like wipes it on his shirt, just like casually, like subtly wipes the slime on him. Anyway, I really thought that was funny. And now it's kind of like the end of the movie. We're getting towards the end already. The big haunting is about to start. So this building that Sigourney Weaver lives in is is kind of the source of this, right? Is that what's going on?
We find that out a little bit later, but
Yeah.
we get like a shot of basically the gargoyles on the top of this building kind of like breaking free. There's like actual like horrible giant dog looking monsters that are like living inside of these stone gargoyles, and we see them like breaking out of their rock casing. And it's kind of in this scene when Venkman went to visit Dana at her orchestra job. He asked her out on a date, and they have their date planned for tonight. Unfortunately for sweet, sweet Lewis, Rick Moranis, this is the same night as his party. And so when Dana comes back to get ready for her date, he stops her in the hall with the line, "You got to come in here. You're missing a classic party."
That's good.
Amazing. But Dana's got her date, so she heads back to her apartment.
He says also like, "Oh, you can bring him. That's cool." Like,
yeah.
He so just wants anything to do with her that he's willing to
any contact with her, contact at all. Yes, without a doubt. And unfortunately, Zool has returned to, or the Gozar the Gozerian, or I don't know, whatever paranormal stuff has returned to her apartment. And she's attacked by her chair, and she's brought to Zool land.
Yeah, she's pulled into this doorway in the chair. Not long after that, or immediately after that, more inside of Lewis's party, the Rick Moranis party, and they're all dancing. He mentions that he's talking about how he only invites clients to his parties instead of friends.
Yeah, because then he could use it as a tax write-off.
Yeah, exactly. So he's paying for this whole party by wining and dining his clients.
What a sick party. I love it. Yeah.
He goes in, like, some people show up and he takes their jackets and he throws them in the bedroom, and in the bedroom there's one of the dogs just waiting in there, and he kind of throws it on top of it, doesn't see it. And the dog busts out of the room and ruins his big party.
It does. Yeah.
It's so sad. He'd been looking forward to that party for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a classic party, and now he's going to miss it himself because he has to run away from this demon dog. And there's a chase scene. Also, congrats to these guys on their apartments. They seem to live across the street from Central Park. Lewis and Dana do. And they each have their own apartment there. They don't have roommates. So hats off, you guys.
Hey, it was a different time, you know?
It was a different time.
People could afford to live.
End your sentence right there. Yes. So anyway, Lewis runs across Central Park and ends up at this restaurant, but can't figure out how to open the door. And the demon dog catches up with him, and we're left kind of not quite knowing what happened to Lewis at this point. But the dog, the demon thing, has caught him.
Yeah, I like the special effects in this movie generally, like the ghosts and the bustin and all that. The dogs in this movie, when they're running, not
doesn't
not
the best.
Too good.
Yeah.
So you don't know what happens to him exactly, but it cuts back to Sigourney Weaver, or Venkman showing up at the apartment, and there's like cops there. They're like, "Oh, somebody let a cougar into their party and then it ran off," or something like that. And so he walks up there and walks past Lewis's place. There's cops everywhere. Goes to Sigourney Weaver's, and she answers the door, but it's not her. She is possessed. With the subtitles on, her name was Sexy Voice. Like, her character name was it just said Sexy Voice.
Sexy Voice. I like that.
And then later it was like Monster Voice.
When it switches. Yeah.
But it differentiates that it's not her talking almost immediately. But yeah, so she's like looking a little possessed, but like totally into him.
And she opens the door.
Oh yeah,
looking fabulous with like her hair blown back and everything. But instead of like welcoming him to the date, she just says, "Are you the keymaster?" And when he says no, she slams the door in his face. So Venkman's clued in pretty quick that this is like there's some weird stuff happening.
He knocks again, and she says the same thing. He answers yes this time.
Yep.
So he enters. There's like a ton of good lines by him in this scene. She's acting all weird and obviously possessed, and he's picked up on it already. At one point, he says, "Are we still going out?" Like when she's just like totally talking in a demon voice or something. And he's like, "Are we still going out?"
Yeah.
Made me laugh out loud. Yeah. So she immediately also tells him that this isn't, what's her name? Dana?
Dana. Yeah.
Dana. This is Zool.
There is no Dana. There is only Zool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's kind of an exorcist-y moment here. She starts floating. We got a real problem on our hands, yeah?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. So Venkman is at her apartment just trying to kind of sort this out, and we get another shot of Rick Moranis. He was not killed by the monster dog, but he also seems to be possessed by whatever is possessing Dana. He is describing himself as the Keymaster, so like this is the guy that needs to find his way to Dana. And he gets picked up by the cops, but they don't know what to do with him, so they bring him to Ghostbusters HQ.
I wrote that too, Bustin HQ right here.
Bustin, that's right. The headquarters for all your busting needs.
Bustin HQ, also known as my bedroom. All right. So,
this is where the magic happens.
Oh yeah, sometimes. It's very low on the magic scale.
Fair.
So yeah, there's I don't even know, but they bring him in here, do some tests on him. There's a lot of end of the world talk happening here.
Yeah.
Let me know if I get too far ahead, but yeah, end of the world, kind of talking about what's going on. And then they get met with a cease and desist by Mr. Pecker, Walter Peck.
Oh, can I add a couple of things in here before we get all the way to that?
For sure.
We finally get to meet Winston, the fourth Ghostbuster here. And his first lines were so weird to me. It was like, the first thing he says is, "Hey, Ray, do you believe in God?" And Ray makes some line about like, I don't remember quite what he says, but his immediate response is, "Well, I do, and I love Jesus's style." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is just a really weird thing to say. Believe in God, believe in Jesus, do your thing. I support whatever you're into, but just don't say that sentence. It was weird.
Yeah, I don't know if I think it was supposed to be funny, maybe. Just
Maybe.
like I like his style. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
he's a very underwritten character, kind of just thrown in here. I think he does have a lot more to do in the second one.
Okay, well, that would be good. I mean, they kind of just gave Venkman everything to do in this movie, and the other three just kind of follow him around.
Yeah, even though it was Dan Aykroyd's, like it was his idea for this movie completely. But
he
they
had
definitely
some pretty amazing ideas for movies back in the day.
He was great, yeah.
Clever guy.
I was gonna say it was originally written with John Belushi in mind, him and John Belushi, but then John Belushi died in like 1982.
Okay.
So it kind of like, and the studio didn't have much faith in this movie, but I mean, it all came together really well for everyone. But I was gonna say the Slimer character, they said later on, they're like, it kind of was like Slimer was kind of like the John Belushi of the movie, something like that.
That's fun. I like
that was funny. Or the spirit of John Belushi with him in the
Slimer.
movie.
That's nice. Did John Belushi like Cheetos?
He loved Cheetos. He had a partnership deal with them, just like Slimer.
Yeah. That sounds about right. Cool.
Cool.
Anyway, I don't like that Slimer's sponsored by Cheetos. I don't like that. But
I know
they're going to do what they're going to do.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So now we're back to your EPA guy. What's his name again?
Peck.
Yes. Walter Peck is back, and this time he's got a warrant, and he shuts down their laser containment ghost jail, even though they tell him about all the bad things that are going to happen. And sure enough, as soon as they turn it off, there's a big explosion and a flood of ghosts that they had trapped over. I mean, how long have they been busting at this point?
Months.
A year?
At least.
Months? At least months. So months worth of ghosts escape back into the city.
Yeah, giant beam of energy and ghostly forms just kind of shoots at the top of the building. This thing was full of ghosts. I don't know how long it has been. That's a good question, but a lot, and all hell breaks loose in New York City.
Yeah.
You get another shot of Slimer, and he's at the hot dog stand eating hot dogs. Slimer is the comedic effect ghost for sure.
Yes.
And they get arrested for this, basically. They're basically blamed. So the Peck guy is blaming them, saying that they are adding hallucinogenic chemicals into the air and making people see these ghosts, and then they show up and like charge them money. So they're inducing hallucinations and then ripping people off by like saving the day, quote unquote. And it's all just been fake. That's his like reasoning for arresting them.
I mean, it's a pretty good scam. Tanner, do you want to do that to some people? We can like start our own fake Ghostbuster business, but we just like feed everybody mushrooms and then charge them money. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Some acid Kool-Aid and just hand it out there, and then charge them money for helping them out.
That's right.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, this is our new business. I need you to take out a second mortgage on your apartment that you rent, please.
Sure.
So
I mean, if they'll give me money if they'll give me money for an apartment that I rent, I'll take it.
That'd be great. Yeah.
So they go to jail and they basically just sit and have a little meeting for a while in jail.
They let them bring all of their stuff into jail. Like they have poster-sized documents that they're like looking at. Another one of these dumb science things. Can I just read this for a second?
Yeah.
The structure of this roof cap is exactly like the kind of telemetry tracker that NASA uses to identify dead pulsars in deep space.
And that's real. That's real.
What does that mean? What does any of that
real
mean?
Telemetry, pulsars, space.
It said NASA. It's got to be real.
What is it? What did they say? The roof cap?
The roof cap. The structure of this roof cap. So this is where they finally connect. This is where they connect Dana and Lewis's building as being some sort of like, I don't know, how would you describe it? Like an in between here and the dead world thing.
Did they explain? Channeling. Yeah. Did they explain that? Why right there? Why the building? Did they explain that at all?
The structure of the roof cap is exactly like that. That was their explanation.
Oh, like, the roof just looks like.
The architecture of this building is not of any normal era, and it was built explicitly to like summon ghosts. Is basically what they figure out in this jail thing. I don't think they say, but maybe I'm wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they do that. Then they are let out because all this shit is happening in New York, and the mayor wants to talk to them. And so they go to the mayor's office. Peck is there and just being like, do not listen to these guys. This is where he says stuff about the drugging. Mm-hmm. They basically convince him by talking about like, this is full apocalypse. The mayor's like talking to a priest that comes in. And so they basically convince him to let them go stop it and get out of jail. Anything else from that scene?
I did love Bill Murray's line, "You will have saved the lives of millions of registered voters." And that was kind of what turned the tide. And then he decides he's going to let them go.
Him and the priest look at each other like, okay.
Yeah.
That's
also,
great.
Quick shout out in the jail scene to Reginald Vell Johnson playing a cop. The cop from Family Matters and the cop from Die Hard is a cop in this movie. Reginald Vell Johnson.
I saw him too.
Shout out, my man. Yeah.
I was like, that guy always plays a cop. I thought it was RoboCop for some reason, but no, you're right. It is Die Hard.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's ever played another character that wasn't a cop.
I don't know. We might end up. I think we should put a survey question about him on there. We'll do a little Reginald Vell Johnson question.
Reginald Vell Johnson.
That's his name. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
So they convince him, and now they're off to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. The they go outside the building, and the pavement just gets all like torn up and moved around, and they fall down into the pit, and everyone's worried about them for a second. And then they come out to great cheers and applause from the crowd.
I thought this was weird. They were
yeah.
like, everyone was so stoked about them showing up before they had really done anything.
Yeah, I mean, they're famous around town already. They've been on stuff.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were, thinking it's probably fake because they don't believe in this stuff. But they're seeing it right in front of their eyes, so maybe they're like, "Oh, the Ghostbusters are here."
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But what happens here? They go up the building. They have to go up a long stairwell. There's a joke about that. Slowly making their way up to the top of this building in a stairwell. And they get up to the top, and there's like this weird. Well, how would you describe that? It's like a stairwell up to like this little pyramid thing.
Yeah, it's the scene we saw in the refrigerator at the very, like, when we first went into Dana's apartment. You're right. It's like a weird stair set up to like an obelisk or a pyramid, and it's all these funky colors. So this is like that spiritual realm that was in the fridge from earlier.
Yeah, and I guess before this, I glossed over that the Keymaster and what is she called? Oh, the Gatekeeper.
The Gatekeeper. Yeah.
They met up in the apartment, and they made out a little bit. Big thrill for Rick Moranis, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
But so they join up, and on the rooftop when they get up there, they kind of disappear. What happens? They go into like what even happens here? Because how does
Dana and Lewis get turned into those dogs?
Oh yeah,
which is weird. And then there's like a final showdown with Gozar the Gozerian, which has taken the form of a beautiful woman, but apparently it's like an ethereal beast, so it can make any shape. So they talk about that.
Beautiful. I don't know about that.
That's fair.
Like, scary red eyes, and I'd completely forgotten about this part of the movie. Like, obviously I remember what happens next, and I remember the dogs, I remember all the other stuff.
Yes.
But I'd forgotten that Gozer shows up as like this girl form, and I guess it's pretty quick. But
yeah.
It
is pretty quick because what happens right away, Tanner?
Yeah, they try to bust her, and she disappears, and they're like, "Oh, well, that was easy," but they didn't do anything. She disappeared, and in like an ethereal form, something says like, "Choose the form of your destroyer." So basically, whatever they say or think of first, it's going to turn into, and that's going to be the thing that attacks. And everyone's like, my mind was blank. And Dan Aykroyd, I guess, thought of his favorite childhood treat, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And that shows up. One of the most iconic scenes in all of movie history, Chris.
Absolutely. It's so inspired. It's so funny. I also noticed watching it this time when Dana's eggs are popping at the beginning, there's a bag of marshmallows as part of her groceries. And I'd never seen that before. Yep.
Yeah, they don't really make any other references to the marshmallows in this movie. Besides that little bag, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this giant marshmallow man just wreaking havoc in the city. Again, like the scene happens also fast. I remembered it happening like a much larger scale thing, but it happens pretty quick. He kind of just walks over to the building, starts climbing it. They roast him a little bit, and he's on fire. He starts climbing up the building, and then they realize what they must do to solve it, which is to destroy this thing.
Cross streams, baby. We got to get those streams across it.
Oh yeah.
When we're busting, we need to have our streams cross.
He says, well, they're like, we can't cross streams. I thought you said we can't do that. He says, you're going to endanger our client. The nice lady who paid us in advance before she became a dog. Yeah. So yeah, they shoot not the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but it's making its way up the building like King Kong, and they cross their streams together, pointed at the thing, and kaboom! Everything explodes. And there's marshmallow everywhere, all throughout the city.
Everywhere, yes.
Yeah,
the
all
whole
over
city
them,
is covered with marshmallow goo. Yeah.
So the busting has happened. Everyone's covered in goo. And Puck just gets a big load on him. Right? They make sure to show him, getting his comeuppance.
Yes.
And then they are worried about the girl, and she comes out of the stone dog, the gargoyle thing.
Yep, they
She's
save
all
Sigourney
good.
Weaver and Rick Moranis.
He asks who does your taxes.
Uh-huh.
He's looking
He needs
for more clients.
Yes, more clients / guests for his next party. And then Bill Murray even gets a kiss as the credits roll. And what song is fucking playing again, Tanner? What do you want to hear right now?
Huey Lewis in the News.
Well, I don't have that, but I have the next best thing, Ray Parker Jr. playing Ghostbusters theme for the third time.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
And we get a little shot of Slimer right at the end that kind of fades out. The ghost of John Belushi. Yeah. Everything's happy. The timeline of all this makes no sense because when they show up to the building, it's daylight. They go up to the top, it's nighttime. They go down and celebrate with everybody, still covered in marshmallow, and it's daytime again.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But I'm not going to nitpick at that. This movie is way too fun. It's way too silly. It's way too great. I'll forgive an errant night scene.
I guess it could have taken him a while to get off the top of the building. Maybe they probably had to get a helicopter in there to rescue him.
The elevators weren't working, right? Maybe it took hours to get up to the 20th floor.
Well, the whole top of the building was kind of in shambles too, so they probably were stuck up there. Anyways, details aren't important here. Chris, how do you feel watching this movie for, I don't know how many times you've seen it?
It's probably the 6th time I've seen this movie. It still holds up. It's still an awesome movie. It's still fantastic. It's funny. It's spooky. I don't know. Still love it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely hilarious. I think the humor really does hold up throughout. It's just a really funny movie with good action. It's the beginning of I read that it was kind of an early comedy. It's one of the first comedy action movies like that, or big budget comedies. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it paved the way for a lot of good stuff.
And one of Bill Murray's most iconic performances. He really is
so
the bread
much
and butter on this movie. Yeah.
So much so that he didn't act for 4 years afterwards.
Seriously.
Yeah, he said that it was just was too big and he got too famous that I think he just didn't want to do anything right away. But yeah, he didn't really do much for 4 years apparently.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the movie. Chris, do you think it's timeless? Or
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely timeless. Yeah, I don't know. It, like you said, it kind of merged comedy and action in a way that hadn't been done. And also it got to... this movie has so much IP. It has so many spin-offs and TV shows. I feel like it got to Ghost stuff before other franchises did. So it's kind of like the Ghost franchise,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, it really it was a real trailblazing movie in a bunch of ways.
It was a huge deal. Yeah. It cost $30 million to make and made $295 million at the box office. Yeah.
Good ROI.
Through re-releases and stuff.
Uh-huh.
It made an extra $32 million from VHS sales. A few years later, it made $200 million in toy sales alone in 1 year.
That's great.
But I did read that the toy sales didn't really take off until the cartoon came out, which was also a pretty big hit. It's only 5 years. So, of course, the kids get involved more, and then the toys start selling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. What else do I got about the little tidbits? It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, including Best Visual Effects, which it lost to The Temple of Doom. And then Best Original Song, of course, your boy.
That's right. Ray Parks Jr.
And it was one of the first, it was early in the blockbuster days. We had Jaws and Indiana Jones and some stuff like that, Star Wars. and they took on they copied the success of Star Wars in that all the toy sales, everything else surrounding it could be huge. Like this is a big franchise all around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm surprised they didn't do more with it. Honestly, it kind of lay dormant until now. Honestly,
Yeah. No, it's pretty crazy. They only made one sequel to this.
Yeah.
In like that era, you know, because it was until Lady Ghostbusters that we got a second sequel. And that's pretty crazy for a movie that was this big and this easily, like you could tell so many stories with the Ecto One and with the proton packs, and you know, like they've got the whole universe kind of figured out. And they only made one sequel with the original cast, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. So it did get that sequel, obviously financial hit. And yeah, I don't think I have anything else about the movie itself. We could talk about the song, Chris.
Yeah, dude. Let's get into Milk. I've got a couple things to talk about. First one's Ray Parker Jr. So he is like a crazy accomplished musician, which I didn't really know. But he was co-writing songs with Marvin Gaye at 16 years old. He was touring guitarist with Stevie Wonder at 18 years old. He opened for the Rolling Stones. He played with Barry White, Tina Turner, Diana Ross, The Temptations, Bill Withers, Aretha Franklin, Shaka Khan. And Bill Cosby was also listed on his Wikipedia. I don't know what he did.
Nice.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he got brought on. They originally reached out to Huey Lewis to do the theme song for this movie, but he turned them down because he was already attached to the Back to the Future franchise, and he didn't want to be like a soundtrack musician. And so they contacted Ray Parker Jr., and it said he made this whole song in 5 days, and he's such an accomplished musician that he played most of the instruments himself. And apparently they were really like insistent that the word Ghostbusters was in the song. And at the time, like other musicians were having a really hard time like figuring out how to do that. And so he figured out just to have his friends yell Ghostbusters so he didn't have to sing the words. And so that was kind of how he came to that. And at the end of all this, Huey Lewis ended up suing Ghostbusters and Ray Parker Jr. because this song, he says, sounds too much like a song off his sports album called I Want a New Drug.
Have you heard that song? I saw this too, but
I listened to it. Yeah, I listened to it while I was like kind of going through this stuff. Also listen to the song Jack and Jill by Ray Parker Jr. I thought that song was really nice. It's got some awesome like Stevie Wonder sounds. Because he's got some cool music. A lot of it is not quite my cup of tea. The lyrics are a little boring, but that song I thought was really great. But yeah, the Huey Lewis song, it does kind of sound like it. It's got the same strut as the Ghostbusters.
Same strut?
Yeah, it's got the same strut, but like, I don't know, it doesn't have.
What do you mean by strut?
I don't know, just kind of that like, it's got the same like pace to it. This thing.
Oh, it's kind of like
yeah, like that thing is very much the same, but like the lyrics are all different. And
well, I will say that, yeah, I mean, just from hearing just that little bit, it kind of has that same strut to it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
but you know, so many songs have that.
Yeah, and like, you know, it's hard to come up with a idea that no one has done a part of before, you know? And so like, I don't know, Marvin Gaye suing Ed Sheeran, like, I don't know how I feel about all that stuff, but I also have never had my work copyrighted or plagiarized or whatever. However you want to look at this kind of like little back and forth between these two guys.
They did ask him to make a song.
Both songs kind of rip, honestly. This Huey Lewis song has an awesome guitar solo for like 2 minutes in it.
Oh, nice.
Didn't
they ask him to? They wanted him to make a song that sounded like Huey Lewis, though, right?
I've heard that, but when I was like reading about it yesterday, I didn't see it like listed.
Okay.
Quite like that. It talked about him seeing like a like a local commercial in New York City, and that was what inspired the "Who You Gonna Call Ghostbusters" part, and then the rest of the song kind of came about. I don't know how direct like he was supposed to sound like Huey Lewis, and maybe I missed that. That might be online, and I just didn't find it. But
yeah, I thought I heard you say that or something. But yeah, maybe it's just the lost in translation over time, where it wasn't like supposed to be Huey Lewis, but it ended up sounding like it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Huey Lewis is like connected to this song in so many ways. Kind of however you look at it, through the lawsuits and all sorts of stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, so that's Ray Parker. And then I've got I watched an episode and a half of the new or the Real Ghostbusters animated show, but I would love to hear if you've got something that you want to talk about.
Well, I got that too.
Okay.
And I guess we could talk about that. Let's talk about that right now. Yeah. What'd you think?
Cool. Yeah, I didn't really like it. So this show was started in 1986. It had 7 seasons. It's the Ghostbusters, sort of. I know, like, Harold Ramis's family is kind of pissed that they made his character blonde, and it looks nothing like him, really.
Mm-hmm.
But they had some interesting voice actors. Arsenio Hall plays Winston in the first 3 seasons. And I guess they brought in Dave Coulier to do Venkman in the later seasons, which I thought was kind of interesting. And like you said, Slimer is a big character in this. So he's like...
he's like the mascot pet.
Yes.
Funny, he's always getting into trouble, and they're yelling like Slimer kind of stuff.
Oh, Slimer.
Yeah. There's also a guy named Frank Welker who plays, I forget which one, but apparently he's like one of the highest grossing actors of all time.
What?
Like the third. He just voices so many things. Like, I can't remember if it was like Star Wars but just like so many major franchises have this guy's voice in it. So
interesting. What's his name?
Frank Welker.
Frank Welker. Okay.
I think he plays Dan Aykroyd, his character.
Okay.
But yeah, just kind of funny that this voice actor's he's considered in like one of the highest grossing actors. I doubt he makes that much money because he's always got just bit voice parts. But he's everywhere. Which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know what you watched, but I watched the pilot episode, the very first one.
Same.
And okay, great. So we can kind of talk about that. They get called into a chocolate factory that is being haunted by 3 pimpled ghosts, and they have to go like get them, right?
I didn't finish the episode, but
okay, totally fair. That was the premise that I got. I also fell asleep partway through this one because it wasn't really doing it for me. The art in this it's actually really beautiful. I liked the animation style a lot. And I think that Ghostbusters is ready for a TV show, but this show, it was just like a lot of the jokes were like, look how big this sandwich is. Like, that's the level of humor that you can expect.
Pretty funny.
Like,
I gotta say, big sandwiches are pretty funny.
It's bigger than a normal sandwich. That counts as a joke. So a lot of the humor to me was like that level. And they spent so much fucking time just like, look at the proton pack. Look at the car. Like this, like, it really felt like they had like learned the lessons from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on how to sell toys. And that's just all this show was.
I think this was before the Turtles, but yeah.
This was before well, maybe it was the other way then. Maybe the Turtles saw this, but it just felt like product placement for kids. And, when you don't have a bunch of SNL alums like making great jokes, it's just the toys and the made up science nonsense that I was complaining about before. So I don't know. I didn't care for it. But
it is made for children.
It's also made for children, and it was made at a time where shows like, like Street Sharks and Gargoyles were like the upper crust of animation. And this one kind of fits in amongst those other shows. So,
it's a classic Saturday morning TV show.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, so I've got some little tidbits about the titles and all the history there. You got anything else about that show specifically?
Yeah, so towards the later seasons, Did you read about the Slimer show?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay, you go on that. I watched one episode of
Well,
that. And that's even worse.
no, you tell me about Slimer. Yeah, tell me
Okay,
about
great.
Slimer.
So towards the end, this show was a huge hit, and it went for 7 seasons. Like I mentioned before, there are many episodes, and towards the end, they shifted it from being a 23-minute show to a full hour of animated Ghostbusters each week. And after a little while of doing that, they ended up keeping the hour, but they split it into a real Ghostbusters episode at the beginning, and then the second half of each episode was 3 mini episodes just about Slimer. And so it was like Slimer off doing something. And I watched one of those, what's it called? Dr. Dweeb, I presume. It's on YouTube, it's free, and you can be the number 48 like if you go and find that real quickly.
Chris, were you the 47th like?
I was 47. You can be 48.
Wait, you liked it. You actually hit the like button.
No, because I didn't like it. It was not a good show. Basically, it's just Slimer. This one, he's in a hospital, and there is I won't say Ghostbuster, because it wasn't one of the Ghostbusters, but there's a ghost hunter who's the bad guy, who's like really bad at his job, and Slimer just gets into foibles and eats things. And that's the whole thing. The whole show. Yeah.
A lot of my history, like my childhood knowledge of the Ghostbusters, I think was from this show, because I did always remember Slimer being a huge part of everything, and I loved Slimer, and he's really not a part of the movie. He's not their sidekick by any means. Ever. At least maybe in the reboots he is, but I think it's funny that they kind of pivoted into this Slimer. It was called Slimer exclamation and the Real Ghostbusters. After
they put him before the Ghostbusters in the title. How crazy is that?
That's great. Well, I got some more title stuff about this.
Keep it coming, baby. I'm
going to transition. It's a perfect transition here to talk about some stuff. So the reason they called it the Real Ghostbusters, I don't know if you saw this, but it's called the Real Ghostbusters because 4 days before that, or like earlier that week, another cartoon had premiered called Ghostbusters. I don't know.
How are the rights to Ghostbusters not owned by one entity?
How
is this possible?
Here's what we got. I got all the answers for you.
Thank God damn it. This is why I talk to you every week.
So that same year, there was a cartoon show called Ghostbusters, which has no relation to it. And this was based off of a 1975 sitcom called The Ghostbusters. So there was a live action show called The Ghostbusters in 1975. Zero relation at all. That Columbia Picture, I think it was Columbia, paid a little bit of money to the studio to use the name Ghostbusters before it was obviously a major hit.
Yeah.
So they paid them a fee to use this name Ghostbusters, even though it had nothing to do with it. It wasn't like a take on it. Wasn't a spinoff. It was just this really crappy live action show about they're like monster hunters, basically.
Right. But it had a great name that they wanted.
Yeah, The Ghostbusters. And so they paid to use the name Ghostbusters. Then in 1986, because the movie was so huge, this old show decides they want to make a cartoon and kind of cash in on the name appeal of it.
Like they're literally just hoping people will confuse their show with the popular movie. Yes,
100%. I mean, basically, they put out lines of toys that were not popular. The show only lasted, I think, the one season.
Yeah, of course it
maybe. And it was very confusing for people because they just were like, they didn't know. Anyway, that's why they put the Real Ghostbusters over here. This is the real one that you want to watch.
I love that. So that's
and
like
it literally
the other show.
Came out like the same exact time, like literally the same week. What was that?
Yeah, so that's the Real. That's just like a dig at the other show.
Yes, this is like, you got Ghostbusters. Sure, you have the title, but we're the Real Ghostbusters. And I watched a little bit of both of these shows.
Did you? How was that one?
The Ghostbusters, the live action thing, is it starts off with like Vampira and a Dracula type character. It's in front of a studio audience, and like at one point Dracula like gets his teeth caught in a tree and they have to yoink him out, and there's like Scooby-Doo sound effects, but it's like a live action. It feels like a play. It's really bad. And then they have like, so it centers around these two old men with like fedoras that they're the Ghostbusters, but their other sidekick is a man in an animal or a ape costume named Terry. Or Tracy.
So their team is two old guys who wear hats and one person in a monkey suit
named Tracy. Yeah. Spencer, Tracy, and then Kong is the other guy's name. Tracy is the
do you know what I want now more than anything, Tanner? I want a reboot of that version of the Ghostbusters starring Kristen Wiig and Leslie Jones and the rest of the Lady Ghostbusters. I want them to do that one also.
Oh, that'd be so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really bad. I don't think it lasted very long. They had their own theme song that was like, "We're Ghostbusters. We're Ghostbusters." I can't sing it because I'm gonna just get it confused with the other song. But they have their own song as well. Not quite as catchy.
Dude,
but yeah, it feels like
and I want Huey Lewis to make the soundtrack for the Ghostbusters reboot. Also, this one. Just as a fuck you to Ray Parker Jr. Yeah.
So yeah, then like I said, that was 75, the live action thing, and then after the movie, they had the animated version, and it's very similar. There's just two old men in their hats. The only thing that they kept around was the two old men in their hats for the animated.
Why? It's a kids show. Why do you want old men as the protagonists?
I know,
but it's a terrible idea.
They have Tracy, the ape sidekick. I think that's their hook.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. I didn't read about any of this. This is great.
It's so crazy. It has no real relation, but it's super super funny. What was I going to say? Oh, and this one, like the animated version, the monkey is like the inventor. That's where they get all their like Monster Hunter stuff.
Sure. The monkey made
the ape or the ape creature. Yeah. Pretty good. I was very entertained by all of that.
I love this.
Digging into that. Yeah. I don't really have anything else on it. They both are bad. That's kind of my review of those shows. And I just love it. It's a piggyback franchise. It makes me want to know, like, even though it was first technically with the name, names can be reused. It's not a ripoff, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
But I want to know other franchises with similar names that have tried to piggyback off the success of something. It makes me, I like that angle is very intriguing to me of like,
sure.
Oh shit, we have this other IP over here that has the same name. And we're going to be dicks about it and release it right when this other spinoff is happening. And
Tanner, it makes me want to
like
trademark a bunch of movie names just with like the idea that it will get made eventually, you know?
I mean, that's not a bad idea.
Like, let's position ourselves to do this piggybacking.
Let's do it. Yeah, we'll just trademark a whole bunch of names for things and then hope one day they'll make a movie titled that. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah.
I like it. It's kind of like those people that bought up websites,
domain names. Yeah.
And then they'd like charge them a ton of money to have like their name as a domain. So super crazy. The piggyback franchise, they are truly the epitome of milking the franchise. I mean, this franchise is perfect for this. The piggyback is perfect for it. What's that?
I was just going to agree with you. This franchise might have the most spin-off like stuff going along with it, but this in addition just puts it over the top, I think, you know?
It's so funny. Yeah. Luckily, I mean, I don't know about luckily, but it didn't really come to anything. Like, I don't think they became millionaires. There wasn't like a successful side franchise with the same name. It got buried and nobody cared about it at all because it stars two old men and a monkey. But that all happened.
Mean, probably everyone who turned that on was like, "Oh, dude, I can't wait to see what Venkman and Slimer are up to." And instead of that, they saw old men wearing hats and a guy in a monkey costume. Yeah,
I did read that. It was just confusing for people because Yeah. I mean, it is confusing. So another transition here. There was a Real Ghostbusters video game. So I played 2 video games this week.
You were busy, man.
Yeah, not as much as you'd think.
Okay.
It's So I spent
in your
half
defense,
an hour
bustin'
watching
makes
these
me feel
two.
good.
Bustin' does make me feel good. And I just couldn't wait to bust again. Okay, where am I? You got me off track here thinking about busting.
Video game.
Yes. Okay, so there's talk about the Real Ghostbusters first, even though it came out second. No, I'll talk about the first one. So the first game to came out for like Atari and all these systems, the ZX Spectrum, which I've been very familiar with since we started this podcast.
Yeah.
It's like where I played the Highlander game and the first RoboCop game. It's like an old PC kind of thing. So it came out for all these things and eventually was re-released a bunch of times on NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, just called Ghostbusters, and that's the version I played. So originally it came out alongside the movie, and then this came out a few years later for a different system. And it was really bad. It's one of these old games that I couldn't figure out what to do. It's not like a clear, okay, I just shoot here, jump over that. You basically start off on a map and there's like ghosts headed towards the middle of the city, I guess. And there's like streets and then there's buildings. There's like 8 buildings and they just say like abbreviations for what they could be. And like one of them just says like HQ, like headquarters.
Wait, is that Bustin' HQ?
I guess so. Yeah. That's where it's like in the middle. And then there's things like shop. There's like a shop you can go to. And I couldn't really figure out anything except for you're the logo for the movie. You're the ghost logo. And so you're just moving the logo around.
Okay.
And you click, I just started clicking like A or whatever. And eventually I went into one of the things to the shop and then all of a sudden you're driving a car down the road and you just move it left and right, trying to dodge other cars.
Yeah.
Not Frogger, but just like some moving road and you're dodging it and you can pick up gas barrels and fill up your gas tank. That's a big part of it. And then you get to a shop and you have some money and you can basically equip your car with like ecto guns and all these things, traps and stuff like that, which I was able to buy it and equip it. I never figured out how to use any of this. My whole experience in this game was you just you press A at a random street and you hop on the car and you just drive down the road for like 2 minutes and then nothing happens. And then every time I started it again, I was like further away and you have like a gas tank and then you'd run out of gas and you'd have to fill up and you go back to the beginning. And every time I did it, I was like further away. So I couldn't even get to the end. I don't know.
That's so stupid. Is this the same era as like the ET video game? Is this like Atari nonsense?
I mean, sorta, yeah. It is like, it's not that bad. I've played that ET game, but
yeah,
I think it sold like millions of copies. So I don't think it was as universally panned. And I did see a video of somebody playing it like later. I had to look it up. There's other parts of this game that I did not get to where you're actually catching ghosts and like trying to like bring them down into a trap. And that part looks actually fun, but I couldn't figure it out or how to get there.
Right, yeah.
Or how to use any of my tools.
You were stuck getting gas for your van. Yeah.
That's literally my experience for probably like 25, 30 minutes. I just
my Lord,
did
man.
that.
Okay.
And so I gave up and that was that. But it was a big success. Regardless of my experience. I think people enjoyed it. Maybe the other stuff is fun once you figure it out.
Yeah.
But that was my experience. The other game I played is called the Real Ghostbusters, based on the TV show. And it was an arcade game, and it's kind of like a 2-player, just shoot 'em up basically, except it's not shoot. Yeah, you're shooting your beam.
Right.
Ghosts. And so you just hundreds and thousands of ghost enemies as you're making your way through these levels. I put in 60 credits worth. So this
Wait,
This would have cost me
is this like
like
a Simpsons game or like the X-Men game with like a
it's
side
like that, but it's
scroller?
like top down. It's top down, and you move like up the screen,
Sure.
not like
Okay.
side scroller exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's that same kind of style, and you can have two people fighting these ghosts, and after you kill the animal, then you shoot it again, and you capture the ghost spirit itself, and then you unload it into the ghost container in between levels. So I gave myself $60 worth of credits. So I would have spent, this would have been like $20 I would have spent. I was able to beat the game straight through, and I died like 40 times.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have probably been able, at the arcade, you can keep going in some of these games as long as you have quarters.
As long as you keep plugging it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's basically what I did. I plugged away all the way to the end. It might be fun with two people. It was a little chaotic and messy, and there wasn't really like upgrades or anything fun that you could do and receive. It just was kind of
just more. It's button mashing if it's anything like the Simpsons game.
Yeah. You just like press forward and hold down the button and just attack as many ghosts as you can. I guess there was like a clean or a screen clearer button where it would just kill everything in front of you, but so it'd be an expensive game, but luckily it was free, and that was that. I didn't quite get to the other game. I know I have a lot already, but there's another game called Ghostbusters for the Sega Genesis.
Please tell me it's based off the TV show with the two old men and the monkey. I'm begging you.
Actually, it might be. I haven't played it yet. No, okay, it's got the standard logo, so I don't think it is, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I'm going to play that next week. It looks like a different version, different game based off of the first film. And then there's a Ghostbusters 2, which I'm going to play. So I'll work my way through these. And there's a bunch of games, third person games later. And like, I think in 2019, there was like a full on Ghostbusters game. So there's a lot to do.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. That's my experience. I did film myself playing those games. I'm making like little collages, showcases of the games I play along with the movies that I'll eventually put out with all these franchises. So
love it, man. Love it.
Not going to be like full playthroughs all the time, but more like a showcase, I think I'll call it. Something like that.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's that. Chris, you got anything else?
I think I'm flesh out. Excited to hear about these other video games and all this other crazy Ghostbusters nonsense as we keep watching through these movies.
Yeah,
I know for me, there's a couple books that I'm looking forward to digging into.
Hell yeah.
That I'll probably be able to talk about next week. But if you don't have anything else, Tanner,
you got more cartoons to watch too, Chris. I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Perfect. Yeah.
I know you loved it.
There's one based on just the secretary. We just watch her day. No, I'm just kidding.
One day.
But yeah, I want to remind our listeners that we're going to start the next show kind of recapping what happened in this movie through our survey. It would really help us out if you took a look at the survey, make some jokes along with us. We'll read them on the show next week when we're talking about Ghostbusters 2. So take a peek at our survey and check in with us next week when we continue this spooky adventure through the spooky journey through the Ghostbusters franchise.
Can't wait, Chris. We'll see you next week, everybody. Bye.
Sounds great. Bye. Bustin' makes me feel good.